Think about a decision you made, a good one. It was probably the right one, but you probably should have handed it off to somebody else. Not because you couldn't make the decision, but it was never actually yours to hold on to. See, every leader has a moment like this, a meeting that somebody else should have led, a responsibility that you've held on to just a little too long. We couldn't let go of control of that, an outcome that you needed to control so bad that you never gave anybody else a chance to carry that duty and responsibility. Last time we talked about leaders that have to go low before they go far, humility. And this time we're going to talk about what that humility can grow into if we let it. Welcome back to The Lead Comes After. My name is Shane Davis, and I really believe that leadership is not a starting point. It's the result of a lot of training, mentoring, and guidance. And it's our responsibility to do that to others as well. Every episode, we're going to take a look at one quality that has to happen in us before it can happen through us. So today's topic is not any easier than humility. Today's topic is the lead comes after surrender. That's right, surrender. Before we go any further, if this is your first time to the Lead Comes After podcast, welcome on board. We loved having you. But just a little bit about Red Letters Leadership. We're under the Red Letters Ministry umbrella. So you can go to redlettersministries.org. There's a lot of self-assessments out there, spiritual gift assessments, DISC assessments, emotional intelligence. So we really tried to build that website to be comprehensive, and everything's free. Also, too, the one thing that sets us apart from some of the other podcasts is that I firmly believe that the Holy Bible is the inerrant word of God. So everything that we talk about, all the points, they're going to reference back to the Bible. And I've said it before, is if you look at any of your favorite podcasts, read your favorite books, your favorite publications, and they look at all the references and recommendations, chances are they go and follow that breadcrumb back. They're going to lead back to a truth from the Bible in most cases. So who is this show for? This show is for anyone in a leadership, in business, ministry, nonprofit, but also if you aspire to be in one. Also, too, this is for anybody because the leaders, if you think about it, we all lead our homes. We can all lead our homes a little bit better with our spouses, with our husbands, with our wives, with our children. So this is for everybody and anybody in between. So today, again, we're going to look at that quality that sits just underneath humility, and it's actually surrender. So I'm going to start with a question. When most leaders imagine losing control, what do you think they picture? Is that missing a deadline? Is that a decision that's made without them in the room? Is that a project that may go sideways if they're not involved, if they're not steering it? And for a lot of leaders, control's not a preference. It's a coping mechanism. It's just how we cope with things. It's how we keep some of that anxiety in our own minds at bay. Is we feel if we can control it, then it's going to go okay. If I'm responsible for it, I want to make sure I'm driving everything. See, here's the thing that nobody really tells you about that is that the tighter you grip something, you're not holding on to it. You're actually choking it out. You're choking out a lot of different things. You're choking out the growth of your team. You're choking out the growth of potential leaders. See, control has a ceiling. Surrender doesn't. And I want to challenge the instinct that we all have around how we equate control with completeness. And see, this is a really delicate topic, and I'm glad you guys are here today. This is something that if you don't have that little nudge inside of you after you hear this message, this podcast, this show, then I didn't convey to you correctly, because control is something that deep down we all have in some areas of our life. And so, as I mentioned before, everything that we talk about is going to be rooted back into the scriptures. And this is no different. So around like control and how we feel about it, we're going to look at Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. It says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding, and in all ways submit to him. and he will make your path straight. Read that again, slow. He doesn't say trust God sometimes. He doesn't say trust God with a firm grip. He doesn't say sometimes, partially, mostly trust God. No, it says all. There's some pretty affirmative words in there. All your heart, all your ways. And so that's the thing that we're going to look at today. And I want to make sure that we understand this concept here as we talk about surrender. Is that surrender's not giving up. Surrender's not giving up. Surrender is giving control over. That's what that is. It's giving over control. So as we've said before on this show, what I like to do is combine the scriptures, the verses, the trainings with actual data that studies have showed. And this is no different from a 2014 Gallup poll of 143 CEOs of America's fastest growing private companies. So a little smaller than those Fortune 500 companies. They found out that they wanted to find out what separated leaders from those companies that really grew and accelerated from those that kind of just stayed stagnant. And it wasn't funding, wasn't marketing, it wasn't even the strategy that they had that held these back. The single leadership talent that they found in those companies that flourished was what they called a delegator. The study found that those companies that had a high delegator generated 33% more revenue in a single year than those with low delegator. If you think about it, that's pretty substantial. 33% higher with a high delegator. So here's the thing. The leaders we have to let go. We have to let go and let some of our staff step up. Not because letting go is easy. It's not. Because the human hand, no matter how skilled we are, was never built to carry everything. We're not built to carry everything. Here's another study that was published in 2018 from the Journal of Leadership and Organizational Studies. They looked at 55 independent samples. And what they wanted to do was they were looking at what they called empowering leadership. They wanted to see what the impact on the business, the organization, the team, the ministry, the nonprofit of those companies that had this empowering leadership. And here's what they found. Leaders who delegate meaning, authority, and trust their people with real decisions will significantly link to higher employee performance and substantially more favorable evaluations of the leader. So that right there shows you that A, our teams can perform when we hand over some of this control, and B, our teams want this accountability. They want this responsibility. Why? Because it favors us. They're happier working for a leader that turns this over. So let me translate this. Let me look at this and think about it this way. High leadership tends to give over more. Surrender doesn't cost you respect. It builds it. I'm going to say that again. Surrender doesn't cost you respect. It builds it. It builds respect among your peers, your seniorities, those people that are above you, your team around you. It builds character, builds respect. So I'm gonna give us three things today. So 3 things today that surrender actually functions in our leadership, practically, biblically, and in the real world. And these aren't just theories. These are just convictions I believe that every leader needs to wrestle with. If you're not already wrestling with, chances are you probably are. First point is surrender leaders release the seat. Better known as succession planning. That's right. I probably scared many of us right now by saying succession planning and surrendering the seat. So that's a good mark. And again, I want to be clear here is that by saying release the seat, I'm not saying that there's a certain number of years where you should step aside and let those under you take over. I'm not saying 3, 5, 8, 12, 15 years. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying there comes a times to where we have to hand those tasks over and those titles over to the next leadership teams. And this is a good example of it right here. It comes from scripture. In Exodus 19, we all know Moses. Moses was doing exactly what he was called to do. He was devoted, responsible leader. He was judging people of Israel. every morning until evening, settling all the disputes, answering every question. This guy was on the go. He was anything but lazy. But it was slowly tearing him up inside. The man who carried too much and wouldn't let go of anything. And thankfully, Moses had somebody in his life that essentially called him out. And that was his father-in-law, Jethro. He watched this day in, day out, and he just saw how it was impacting Moses. And in Exodus 18, verse 17 and 18, it says, the things that you do is not good. This is Jethro talking to Moses. The things that you do is not good. You will surely wear yourself out, both you and the people with you. For this thing is too much for you. You are not able to perform these tasks by yourself. So this is our first illustration of succession planning way back in history in Moses' day. See, Jethro wasn't questioning Moses' heart, his dedication, his passion, his calling from God. He was just giving him a structure, telling him, teach the people what's right, anoint the capable. You have trustworthy leaders. Let those leaders lead. Let them handle what they can handle. Then that way they can bring the hardest cases to you, which is us as leaders. That's what we are to do for our teams. We are to remove obstacles and we are to support our teams. We're not to control and choke everything out because we just don't want to have that control taken away from us because we feel we may lose something. We're not going to lose anything. And see, the good thing about it too is Moses didn't take this as an insult. It actually says in Exodus 18:24, Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did what he said. He didn't argue. There's no defense of, but there was none of that. He surrendered the seat. And we'll later see too in the next is that Moses actually surrendered some of that responsibility over to Joshua. And so when Moses passed away, Joshua stepped into that role. And the Israelites, it just kept going. Very little dip in productivity and the way of life. But we later see that Joshua didn't do the same. Joshua didn't have that plan, that succession plan. And when Joshua passed away, that's what began the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. So it goes to show you the contrast of having a succession plan and getting some of that responsibilities over to those successors and when you don't have it. So this is something I want you to think about the seat you're sitting in. Is there somebody else ready for that seat? Is there somebody else that's been ready for that seat? But that you're wearing yourself out because you're concerned about losing control. You're worried about what your superiors are going to think about you because nobody else can do it the way you can because you feel like you're losing something. Here's a couple impacts that I've seen personally on the lack of succession planning and the lack of handing over that control. Is the first one is it can hold our business, our ministry, our nonprofit. It can hold all that back, our teams. It can hold us back because the next generation of leaders and people that we surround ourselves with, they have a different eye on things. Our way is not always the right way. Our way is not always the best way. And if we limit that thinking and that thought from our teams and handing over some processes and tasks and all that to them, we're essentially choking out that creativity of our team and our excitement and that want for them to grow. But it can also lead into the next point. The second thing is that your next generation of leaders will leave. They'll go somewhere else. If they've been sitting in that co-pilot seat for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years, for 4 years, and they don't see that succession planning, they're going to find something else to where they can further their career. Their career paths have reached that proverbial fork in the road to where it's, am I going to be in a leadership position in this company, in this ministry, in this church, in this nonprofit, or am I going to have to go somewhere else? And chances are somebody will come after them. So I love the way John Maxwell puts it in his book, The Leader's Great Return. He speaks of identifying and growing those successors early. Doesn't mean you have to turn over the control early, But what he calls that is bringing them to the table. You let some of that staff, some of that next gen leaders come to the tables with you, essentially mentor them, let them shadow you, see what an executive leadership meeting really looks like. See what decisions look like behind the curtains of the church. In a nonprofit, what does fundraising look like? It'll also bring awareness and confirmation to you that, is this person ready? What else do they need? But also too, from the individual, it'll give them more insight for them to realize this is probably not something I want to do. Or it'll reconfirm that this is exactly what I feel God has called me to do, is to lead this, is to be that person, to step in. Second thing, surrendered leaders release the credit. Release the credit. Kind of goes back to episode 1 of giving away the win, but it's releasing the credit. It's sometimes leaders, we're just not generally comfortable with doing this. But again, another great example that shows in the scriptures is in Judges 7 with Gideon. And Gideon was going to fight the Midianite army, and he had 32,000 men ready to fight with him. And those 32,000 men, they were still, even with 32,000, they were still outnumbered. But God came to Midian and said, hey, your army's too small. Too big. I'm sorry. Too big. Not too small. Which we would have thought. We would have thought God would have been like, you only got 32,000? No, you need more. Instead, God went the opposite. He said, your army's too big. And so Gideon had everybody that was afraid, allowed them to go home. And 22,000 of that 32,000 went home, leaving them only 10,000. And God came to Gideon again and said, you're still too big. So Gideon, and through God's advice and counsel, got down to 300 men. 300 men. And in Judges 7:2, it says, the people with you are too many for me to deliver Midian into their hands. Or, here's the key, or Israel would boast against me. My own strength has saved me. So essentially what God is saying here is, hey Gideon, if you go and attack the Midianites with this large army, your army and the people around you in your country are going to say, look at what we did. Aren't we great? There's no doubt about this. We did this. And God's like, no, you're going to go with 300 men and you're going to conquer this massive army. So I'm going to leave no doubt that it was me that did this with you guys. That's powerful right there. That's powerful. You got to turn over that credit, got to turn over the credit, release the credit. And, one thing too is that it's hard for us because we're hardwired. We're hardwired to build, to achieve, to produce results, and surrender just doesn't come easy. It's actually counterculture. It goes against that. And releasing tasks, it almost feels like we're taking our children to kindergarten for the first time and we're releasing them over to somebody. But it doesn't have to feel that way. And it's scared. Don't get me wrong. It is scary to do that, to release that. But it's the only way that teams and people under you and organizations are going to thrive. So let me ask you this. What direction is your instinct pointed when something goes right? When something goes right, where is your instinct at? Is it toward the mirror? Is your instinct toward the mirror about you sit there and you look at yourself? Yeah, I did that great. I led that with no problem. That's awesome. Or is your instinct toward the window where you look out? If you have an office with a giant glass, you look out and you see your team and you're like, those guys did that. Those guys are awesome. I am so happy and proud to lead this team. So this is what I would do. I used to do whenever I was in my roles. I would bring the team members up that worked on the project that were heavily involved. And what I would do is I'd let them communicate and present to the leadership team. I mean, after all, they were doing all the work. So I would be there to support them. But what we would do is we would spend time before that meeting with the leaders, hours and hours prepping them, going through the presentation, asking questions that they may get asked. And so what that did was get them comfortable. And so when they stood in front of the leadership team, It looked like, and rightly so, that they were the one that was driving this. It gave them some face time with the leaders. It showed the leaders, the leadership team, that we have capable leaders under me. And it made it a lot easier. They gained trust of those leaders. Leaders felt comfortable coming to them, asking questions. Now, don't get me wrong, I was there for support. And there were times that the individual got asked a question we weren't prepared for, and the right answer was always, we'll take a look at it and we'll get back to you. Point number 3, surrender leaders release the outcome. So this is something, again, releasing the outcome, not the task, not the credit, but the result, releasing that result. And there's a moment in every one of our lives that the effort's real and the outcome, but the outcome is completely out of our hands. We do the best we can, but we turn that over. That's a moment that surrender really becomes real. And it becomes real fast. And if you just talk about that and y'all surrender this, surrender that, because that's a word we throw around pretty easy in podcasts and videos and shows and online and in posts, we throw around that pretty easily. But it's not easy to do. And we had a great example of this in Jesus himself. The night before the cross, Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray, and in such anguish, Luke tells us that he was in such anguish that he was sweating drops of blood. That's deep anguish. That's not calm. But this is what a leader, and the leader, the true leader under pressure, was asking God for another way. And in Luke 22:42, it says, this is Jesus, this is red letters where it says, Father, if you're willing, remove this cup from me, yet not my will be done, but yours. Your will be done. Notice the order. Jesus didn't skip the honest request. He asked first, fully and honestly. He surrendered anyway. That's the model of surrender for us. Surrender is not always the absence of struggle. There's going to be struggle. It's not leading from a place to where it's not going to cost you anything. But you just have to do your best and turn it over to those that are going to make the decisions. I had a situation like this many years back where I was being coached and mentored and trained to be a leader in a director type role at a former company. And I was working with the leader of that organization and essentially was told, hey, this is your position. The person is going to be retiring. We're going to get you trained up, mentored up. So whenever she retires, this is going to be your position. Well, things didn't go the way he and I planned, and I was not put in position. So from my standpoint, I had really one of 3 things to do. And that was something that was out of my hand. Again, a surrendered leader releases the outcome. I had no outcome on that. I had no say on that, but I did have a say in how I reacted. And so I could react it in one of 3 ways. Complained about it and probably let it impact my performance. And I probably would have gotten fired anyway. The second thing, I could have put my head down, would got me nowhere, been just grumbled, said, okay, I'm just going to keep chugging forward. Or the third thing, which is what I did, is I found another company that would value the experience and the leadership that I gained. And fortunately, there was a company that was willing to take the chance on me. And it's one of those God moments that if you look at it, it was the right moment. I wanted to do something here, but I was not in control of the outcome. And looking back at it, the right outcome was made, not by me, just following God's plan and God's divine plan. And so let me tell you a story too about this. This is a story that we're all familiar with. We probably know the name Truett Cathy. So he grew up in working in the restaurants and working all throughout the days and the weeks and the nights. And he spent many years in this. And then he finally got the restaurant turned over to him. And the first thing he did was he said, we're going to be closed on Sunday. We're going to use Sunday to let our employees rest, to let our employees go to worship if they choose. And so that was what we now call Chick-fil-A. And the key thing is that he made this decision right from the beginning, not after the money started coming in, not after everybody started praising and looking at the locations growing. He did this right from the very beginning. He set the tone early. There was even a mall that kept pushing him to open on Sunday because everybody else was there. And he pretty much told them, no, that's the Lord's day. That's for my employees to get refreshed. And just to give you a little bit of perspective on what that is, quote, cost, which they will tell you it's not a cost. It's about $1 billion to $1.2 billion a year by being closed on Sunday. So that's key. And he actually said our decision to close on Sunday was our way of honoring God and directing our attention and things to matter more than business. Amen. Amen. More than money, more than business. So see, we can actually make them grow. And that's what makes people that work for Chick-fil-A. They love Chick-fil-A. They know that they're going to be off on Sunday, and it matters a lot. So I'm going to close with these questions. We're going to wrap this up, and I'm going to close with these 3 questions that we're going to think on until the next time we're together. Number 1, what seat are you sitting in that somebody else is ready for? And what is it costing you and the team to keep occupying that seat? That's the first one. Second one, where are you currently positioned to take credit for something that it's not really about you? You're positioned to take credit for something that's really not all about you. And the third thing is, what outcomes are you still gripping with? Are we still gripping with so tightly that we hadn't handed it over to God? Not because we hadn't prayed about it, but because we haven't let go of it. It's something that I'm holding on to. I just can't release it over to God, like he says. I'm just trying to control everything. You can have the best plan in the room, but if it's not executed correctly, it's no more than drawing on a piece of paper. And control is one of those things. It's God who controls the outcome. We need to do our part, but we have to rely on him. And so we're going to end with this verse here in this Proverbs 16:3. Proverbs 16:3 says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and he will establish your plans. He will establish your plans. So keep praying to the Lord. He listens. He always responds. And so we've come to the end. So I want to thank you guys for being with me and spending time on the Lead Comes After podcast. Again, my name is Shane Davis, Red Letters Leadership. Go check out the website, redlettersministries.org. All kind of assessments out there. Love to hear your feedback on that. The next step, if this episode resonated with you, go ahead and share it. Would love to have you share it. Invite other people to join in on the journey. We're going to have some interviews with some leaders coming up, so that's going to be fun. So keep chugging along, guys. Be humble and surrender some of those things you could definitely turn over to. So in the next episode, we're going to look at the next quality that has to happen in you before it can happen through you. All right. Until then, lead well, lead from the right place, and the lead comes after.